the first thing that I want to say to anybody who is listening, and I know I don't know your name, but I'm looking you in the eyes and I'm telling you right now, there is no reason that you can't do what I've done or others have done that have gone far beyond me. There is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your brain. You can reach unimaginable heights if you're willing to let yourself accept that that's the truth. Most things in life are intimidating vocabulary. Just learn the definition of these words. Go look up underwriting. Talk to somebody, ask them what underwriting means to get that mystique of like, oh, I'm not that sophisticated.
Welcome to the Abundant Journey podcast, where we talk with incredible entrepreneurs who give world-class advice from their own journeys. I'm your host, Nick James, and I'm a commercial banker turned business owner, along with my co-host, Nick Offenkamp. We want to help you grow and scale your business while not losing sight of what matters most. Join us as we learn from the experts what it takes to grow $1 million business. What is going on, everybody, and the Abundant Journey YouTube community? I hope you guys are doing great today. It's good to be hanging out with you. I am Nick James, and we got another coaching call lined up. For some of you, if you have been watching YouTube, you might have recognized this face from earlier this year. I can't believe it's been almost a year, but Brian Tibbs is hanging out with us today. Brian, how are you, man?
I am doing good. How's everybody doing? It is so good to be back. I can't believe it's been 10 months since I was last with you.
Well, and I'm excited to get caught up a little bit and tell our listeners about what life has looked like for you in our recap here, because when we met, you were just about to launch your first book. You've got a community that you've been building. Now, of course, the purpose of the call today is to dive into some more practical how-tos, but I think it would be great to refamiliarize our audience with you. For those of you who don't know Brian, go back to episode 58. We had him on the podcast 10 months ago now at this point, and it has been a busy 10 months. But Brian, tell us what you've been doing.
Yeah, it has been a busy 10 months. I'm just kind of reflecting on all the stuff that's happened. The book we launched, we actually hit number 1 on Amazon in all 3 of our categories. So that's news since you and I talked. And we actually also hit, this was the coolest part of the book launch, is we were the top new release in the investing category for a couple of days. I mean, that shifts all the time, right? So for a couple of days, and we beat out Tony Robbins and Dave Ramsey.
Let's go.
We're in that as well. My paperback was number 1, my hardback was number 2, and then it was Dave Ramsey and Tony. So now I'm sure they overtook me a couple days later, but anyway, it was fun while that lasted.
That's right.
So So, and then after that, we decided based on the response from the book that we wanted to go another layer deeper. And so we launched the Unexpected Investor Community, which is it's the same as the book. It's helping people who are wanting to they're wanting to really create their own destiny, their financial destiny, and maybe break free from a W-2, or maybe just make sure that they've got something later in life where they can enjoy life rather than just kind of survive. And so, the community is a coaching based. So that's perfect for this phone call today. It's a coaching based community of people who are coming together, sharing ideas, teaching, learning, doing deals together, and just trying to figure out how to get ahead.
That's awesome. Well, you guys have been busy. Remind me and the audience, and we'll of course attach some links, but remind us what the title of the book is again. Yeah,
it's called The Hacker Method, The Unexpected Investor's Guide to Building Wealth, Even on Limited Income.
Love it. Yeah, no, you guys need to check that out. It's a great book, and we'll, again, attach links to that. So I mentioned to you, Brian, and our audience, we love jumping into these coaching calls because we get to hear these inspirational stories from people and their journey on how they've become successful as entrepreneurs, business owners. And then we say, all right, well, let's not just stop there, but let's go further. Let's kind of pull back the curtain. Let's say, hey, how did you do what you've done? What are lessons learned along the way that I think folks who are in the grind right now can take back to their business, back to their entrepreneur journeys, and really start doing that? But before we do that, let's do one thing. Give us, again, check out episode 58, but give us maybe a 1-minute recap of your entrepreneur's journey, what you are focused on, and really how you got there.
Yeah. You want me to start from my very beginning?
As far as you want to go back, just a refresher. Again, I think anybody can go back to episode 58, check it out, hear more of your story. I mean, we talked for an hour, which I love that conversation. But yeah, just kind of the cliff notes.
Yeah. So the very high level is I remember having a conversation with my grandfather and my dad when I was 16, and they were going to go buy a duplex. And our family had never done that before. And so that was news to me. I thought it was insane that you would let strangers live in your house. Maybe they pay you, maybe they don't. You got to go unclog toilets at 2:00 in the morning. I mean, I thought that was the dumbest idea in the world. And then they showed me, well, this is why we're doing it. And they were going to multiply their down payment by like 3 times and build wealth. And so at 16, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a real estate investor. And so at 19, I was in college. Rather than pay rent and pay somebody else's mortgage off, I decided to start building my real estate portfolio. And from there, just kept adding 1 unit at a time or 1 duplex at a time or whatever. And today I've got 45 short-term rentals in 2 different markets. And that's my source of income. I don't have any other W-2 job or anything like that. Yeah. And we're looking to even double that portfolio in the next 3 years. So that's the nutshell of it.
I love it. No, that's a great recap. And so we're going to dive right into our questions here. So one of the things in the episode, if our listeners go back and check out, is that you spent a large chunk of time overseas, and how that pertains to the business and the properties and the real estate portfolio. I think a lot of times that one of the biggest hurdles to overcome in business is the limiting beliefs. Assuming you can't do this or accomplish this, you can't build wealth. You can't build a portfolio while you're overseas. You can't, do this while your priorities are elsewhere. So I wanted to dive in and hit you there with the first question. What were some limiting beliefs that you had along your journey, and what are some practical ways to overcome those limiting beliefs?
This is such a good question. And I think this may be the number one stumbling block for most people when they're trying to do something. Maybe it's not even hard, but it's different, right? Different not only for themselves, but different from the way the world seems to work, right? So I really love this question. And the first thing that I want to say to anybody who is listening, and I know I don't know your name, but I'm looking you in the eyes and I'm telling you right now, there is no reason that you can't do what I've done or others have done that have gone far beyond me. There is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your brain. You can reach unimaginable heights if you're willing to let yourself accept that that's the truth, right? Now, what limiting beliefs have I had? There are too many to count. And I'm sure that there's more than I could count that I'm still dealing with. I mean, I'm trying to grow on a constant basis, and I'm overcoming stuff all the time. For me, I do know for sure that there have been times where I've been faced with an opportunity, but fear would grip me, and I would go through the what ifs. Well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? Well, what if the economy, or what if interest rates, or what, there's just so many things that could potentially go wrong. Yeah. And I think what I've developed a skill of, I'm adamant that you've got to do good underwriting. And for those of you who don't know that, maybe that's an intimidating term, but that's another thing we need to talk about. Most things in life are intimidating vocabulary. Just learn the definition of these words. Go look up underwriting. Talk to somebody, ask them what underwriting means to get that mystique of like, oh, I'm not that sophisticated. Underwriting is research. Do your research. Study what you're going to do. Talk to a mentor who's done what you're about to do. This is my favorite advice for people when they're like hemming and hawing and I don't know if I can do it. Go find somebody who's done exactly what you're wanting to do. Show them your deal. Let them poke holes in it. And by the time you're done massaging that thing, if your mentor says it sounds like a good deal, do it. Yeah. You have an expert that has given you permission to take the risk. Yeah. And is there risk? Yes. But if you will do your research and your underwriting, it's what's called measured risk. No risk, no return. Yeah. If you just stay in that phase of hemming and hawing, oh, I'm not sure, there's going to be some risks, you've already lost. Yeah. So in order to get ahead, you need to take a risk. So there's one. I don't know if you want to dive into more or.
I think that's really helpful. I think that's such a great point, because those limiting beliefs can so often be debilitating and crippling for people. And especially, I think, as an entrepreneur, if you're in it and maybe you're afraid to take the next step, or your business is failing and you have things not working out very well, you're not gaining new customers, you're not gaining new clients, whatever that looks like, those limiting beliefs, I think, are very, and I think you're hitting on it, they're very self-imposed.
Yeah.
And they are the things that you put oftentimes in front of you. You have to be able to go beyond that. And I think your story specifically is one that's unique, because a lot of times folks will say, well, my market isn't a good market to invest in. I just am not going to do that. Full disclosure, I've said that before. I don't like my market because of whatever reason. And here you were investing in finding ways to grow the business literally across the world.
Yeah.
And so, was there problems to deal with? Were there headaches? Were there challenges? Were there issues? Of course. But you still found a way to make it successful and move it forward.
Yeah, and even more than that, I think one of the blessings in disguise by me, I was living in South America and I was investing mostly in Boise, Idaho. So 5,000 miles apart, in some cases 4 time zones separated us, from my team. And so, but I think one of the benefits of that I would never have really designed on my own is I had to create a team that could operate independently of me answering every question, pushing every button. And so by the time I actually moved back to the United States, I had a system that was running without me. That's like the dream of every entrepreneur, right? And that was forced upon me, and it was the best thing in the world. So I could have said, no, I can't invest outside of my own neighborhood, when actually that was the best thing for me in that sense, right?
That's super good. And I think that really segues good into the next question, which is, we're talking people, we're talking human capital, we're talking the team and training and equipping them to be able to do the things that they need to do so you're not needed. Man, so many entrepreneurs, I think, either say, no one can do it as good as me, so I'm going to be the person who does it all. Or maybe they just don't have an idea on how to build that team. What are some practical pieces of advice you would give, whether that be human capital, culture, community that you're building? What are some lessons you've learned along the way with that?
Another great question, and so important, and also something that a lot of people struggle with, including me. I was listening to a guy, a mentor of mine, that was once talking about hiring, and he had the same problem. He's like, I'm looking at hiring somebody who's going to cost me $40,000 a year, which isn't even that big of a salary for a professional job. And he's like, I couldn't get over the fact that I was going to be taking $40,000 off of my bottom line. What if he doesn't work out? What if he doesn't perform? What if he doesn't this, that, and the other?
Sure.
And he said, and then I came to the conclusion, I think he had a mentor helping him as well. I came to the conclusion that all of my contracts have a 90-day review stipulation. At the end of 90 days, we're going to sit down and we're going to say, how's this going for you? How's it going for me? Is this something we want to continue? So it's almost like it's like a parachute to get out of the thing if it doesn't work out. So he said, now, instead of looking at a $40,000 bill, my exposure is 90 days. It's four times. So it's $12,000, 3 months, $44,000. It's $12,000. That's my investment. Can my business handle that? Yeah, my business can handle that. And that it gives you the permission to push that button, execute, and move forward. Obviously you still want to try to select the best candidate you possibly can.
Yep.
But it just helps getting past your own junk, that where you're saying, well, my business can't afford to hire that person, when the truth might be your business can't afford not to hire the next person. You are burning out. You are not capturing the business that you could capture if you, as the entrepreneur, could focus on bringing home the kill, and letting the people who are experts at dressing that hunt, and you just go bring home the bacon, right? And that's really what the role of the entrepreneur needs to be. And build a team around you of people who can do what you want to do at least as good, if not better than you.
Yeah. I think that's super helpful. When you think about the asymmetric bets that we hear often, that feels more like that when you frame it that way. And simply explain, the asymmetric bet says that the risk is there, but there is a lower risk, but then there is a ultra ceiling that's much higher for the potential for reward. And so you're right. In his situation, he could have been out 12 grand, maybe even less if it it didn't work out within the first 30 days.
Right.
But what if that person 3, 5, 7, 10X's his business? Gosh, I mean, and so that's, yes, there is a risk. There is a little bit of a gamble there as you're looking, but it is the way you have to grow. It's because you can't do it all yourself. I love that. So one of the things that we talked a bit about when we had you on the podcast was you had spent some time raising capital. You had spent some time partnering with investors, getting a fund going. Not a lot of people do that. I think, again, under that spirit of I'm going to do it myself, that can be another one of those limiting beliefs. I want to dive in a little bit to raising capital because we know that that's a way to really grow your portfolio and your business quicker. Bring it on an investor, bring it on a partner. And maybe that's not even just a real estate business. Maybe that's, an operating type of business.
Absolutely.
But in that, I think a lot of times we can get this feeling of imposter syndrome. We can get this feeling that, hey, I don't have enough credibility. I don't have enough reps. I haven't done enough deals. I haven't been in my business long enough. So what are some ways to overcome that imposter syndrome? And maybe what are some ways that you felt that early on as you were talking to investors?
Yeah, so that's so good too. So yeah, raising capital, it took me a while to get to the point to where, basically I had to run out of my own capital before I was willing to go raise money from other folks. In the sense that I couldn't keep, advancing at a good clip, without other people's capital. So I think there's a couple of thoughts that I have right away. Number one, let me talk about, I do have some investors now that have given me their funds and they're passive and I'm the one running the fund. Something that has surprised me a little bit about having investors, all I thought about was, oh man, now I'm going to have to send them an email every month and I have to give them updates. What if it doesn't go well? All that stuff that rolls through your head. Here's the reality of the situation. I have people who've trusted their retirement funds with me. It's not the fund that they're eating with, but these are important chunks of money.
Totally.
My original fund was minimum $100,000. So we're not talking about chump change. This is real money. And what I've found is when we're facing some sort of an unknown or a new thing in the market or whatever, I have a group of people who are very interested in my success because it directly relates to their success, who would love to hear about a challenge that I'm facing and lend their expertise to the discussion. Rather than, hey, buddy, just some random friend, hey, what do you think I should do? Oh, you should do this. And it's no skin off their nose. But I'm getting people who are invested, who care about me and my success, and are giving me multiple angles of view on how to best navigate this crazy world that we're trying to get ahead in, right? So that's the first thing that I wasn't really expecting. I think too, we, certainly Americans, probably all human beings, there's a stigma around asking people for money that feels uncomfortable, that feels a little bit weird. Let me help you change your mindset on that. If that's something that you're like, I don't want to ask people for money. Here's what you're actually doing. You're saying, hey, Mr. Joe and Jane, I'd like to make you wealthier. Change that mindset. And here's my plan. This is what I'm going to do. And I don't have enough capital to make it all happen. So I'm looking for wealthy, successful individuals to jump on this with me, maybe give me some advice along the way, but I want to give you, this is my projection of what the returns are going to be down the road. Totally reframe what you're actually doing. Now, honestly, you actually need to believe that you're going to be making money. Of course, you wouldn't jump into something if you didn't think you were. Have a solid plan in place, do your underwriting, do your research, and then present that plan to them. And if it's for them, they'll accept it. If it's not, it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with you. That's just not the right opportunity for them at this moment. And then knock on enough doors until enough people say, yeah, they're going to jump on.
I love that. And I think really reframing that mindset, if that's what you're going for, as, again, my mind lives in two worlds here. One is, like a real estate investor type, but then of course, being a banker, running an operating business now as an entrepreneur myself, there's different types of investors. There's different levels of investors. We just had somebody on the podcast and we're going to drop his episode who says, man, having the right investor in your camp going and with you and excited about what you're doing is essential. And you're echoing that. But I love the mindset shift you're talking about where A lot of times I think investors say, well, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, or, the operators say there's too many cooks in the kitchen. We don't want the investors involved. We just want somebody passive. But really you embracing their wisdom, their vantage point, their experience. I think that's going to be super helpful for people because how often we say it here at Abundant Journey, we're better together, and so
100%.
really being aligned with those right people. And I'm sure that probably spills into the employees that you've brought on as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, back to the investor, if somebody has $100,000 to give you, they earned that somehow. They use some expertise or some connection or something. That is a very valuable asset. And in terms of employees as well, I mean, yeah, you have to hire people. You don't want to hire clones of yourself. That would be a disaster. You want to hire people who have opposing strengths to yours, right? And put them in the spot. Think about an aspect of your business that you just despise. You hate doing it. Then go find somebody who loves that. And it's hard for entrepreneurs to think that anybody loves that aspect, whether it's payroll or talking to people or whatever, customer service. There's somebody out there that just would do that all day long without getting paid if they had to, right? Yeah. So go find that person, and then you never have to worry about it again. And then think about how that improves your business. When somebody is doing what they love to do versus you who's doing it because you have to grind through it, that's going to improve your business.
Yeah. That was not one of our planned conversation points, but I want to camp there for another second because I think that is essential. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, your vantage point is limited to what you believe and what you see. And so there are tasks and things to do that you hate doing, and you just assume that everybody else in the world hates doing those. But man, that is spot on to say there are people who would, I love being on the phones. I love having conversations with people, hence the fact that I've been doing a podcast for 2 years. I love talking to people, but there are people who they would melt being on the phones. And that's okay because people like me get to do that. But yet I've dove into the world of SEO optimization and Google profiles. And I'm like, this is terrible. And I can't stand it. And so again, removing that limiting belief and saying, well, everybody else feels that way. No, there's people who thrive and love doing that. Just like we brought on a guy for doing our video editing about a year ago for this podcast. He crushes it with doing all of these editing, but I don't think you'll ever see a mic in front of his mouth. So no, that's a good point. Well, let's shift a little bit here as we kind of get ready to land this plane with the coaching here. One of the big things you talk about in the book and you really lean into is just the concept of budgeting and money management. And, to give a little bit of a preface there, you really lean into this fact of, hey, there's ways to manage your money better so that you can start investing now. And also, living below those means. And so many Americans, we live at or well beyond our means, and we're in this endless cycle. So specifically thinking about the business owner in mind, budgeting is essential. And I feel like I'm a banker right now talking about how you got to know what your profit and loss statement looks like. Yeah. But I think so many business owners, so many entrepreneurs don't have a clue what the numbers are telling them. Right. And they spend so much time building their thing or selling their thing or marketing their thing, but yet they don't look at the numbers. So specifically, as you've stepped into the business owner role and as you have continued to grow, you've had to manage the money coming in, the money going out, employees, all of the different things. What are just some practical pieces of advice and tips you would give to folks as they are growing their businesses as it pertains to budgeting?
Yeah, I think it's pretty widely known that something there's lots of different stats. In fact, you said one earlier when we were talking about 90% of businesses. What was the stat that you shared? I can't remember exactly what it was.
90% of businesses never get past that $1 million revenue mark.
Okay, past the $1 million mark. I've also heard that 90% of businesses never get to their 8th birthday, right? Like 90% of them fail in the first 7 years. And why is that? I think a big part of that is we can only sustain a breakneck pace and break even at it for so long. Yeah. We're human beings. We're not robots. We just can't continue to function that way. So what you've got to do is you've got to force yourself to demand that there's money left over. And after you have been paid, And if you're hearing this and you're saying, yeah, that's easy to say, that's easy for you to say.
Sure.
I'm in the same boat as all y'all.
Yep.
The customer's going to pay what the customer's going to pay. The cost to provide that service is the cost that's going to provide that service. What you have to do is you have to budget. I mean, you have to create, okay, this is what I expect to be coming in next year. This is what I expect for it to cost, and then track it month by month and make sure that you're on track. And if you're in an industry where it's impossible for you to get paid, maybe you're in the wrong industry.
It's good.
Because you need to insist that you are getting paid for your time. My daughter just started a little plant sales business on her college campus. And I was thankful that she came to me and said, Dad, help me figure this out. I don't know what I'm doing.
Sure.
And I said, you don't just have materials costs, you have your labor. Because if you're not going to charge off every single plant that you sell a certain amount of your time, you might as well go get a job down at Chick-fil-A where they're going to actually pay you for your time.
Yep.
Right? So if you're not willing to budget in that cost element into your business, man, I worry that you're going to suffer the same fate at that 7-year mark where you just can't continue to sustain it.
Yep.
And by forcing yourself to get paid, demanding that you get paid, that's going to force you to figure out the budget in all the other categories so that at the end of the day, you've got some left over, you've been paid. That's how you can add staff like we talked about a few minutes ago. When there's a little bit left over, you can add some staff so that you can grow to that next level and survive to your 8th birthday and kill it.
I love that. I think it's, a couple things you're hitting on. 1, strategy, 2, planning, but how often I think it's easier to just not look at the numbers and just assume it's going to work out. Maybe you're afraid. Maybe you don't know what they're going to show you. But I think at the end of the day, you said that line really well. If you're not even willing to do that, maybe you're doing the wrong thing, because there's a lot of stress-free type of jobs where you don't have to manage all of that. Now, you and I know we're not in it for that reason. I mean, we are in it to not only change the lives of our families and the community around and make a difference. And that's going to be a good segue into what you're doing here, looking into 2025. But I think that can't be underscored enough, and that can't be talked about enough. You have to be laser focused on both where the money's coming in, where it's going out, and really have your finger on the pulse. And so the first step is probably just to, hey, be looking at it every day, have the plan. And I love what you said there too, is have the plan for expanding. What do you need to do and how do you need to get to that next level so that you can bring on the next person? And it's just a process. One of the things that we heard recently from another guy is this isn't done in a week. It doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. It takes time. It's a process, but you got to stick with it.
Yep. Absolutely. 100% agreed. Yeah, I got to do that.
Cool. Well, man, this has been awesome. Before we wrap this call up here, I want to do 2 things. 1, remind our listeners where they can find you. We'll have some links for, the website. But the other thing is you got some pretty cool, exciting stuff going on in 2025, both with the community as well as a convention and some coaching and things like that. So take this where you want. This is a plug. It's an opportunity for folks to get to know you a little bit more. Who's the community for? Tell us about what you got going on in 25.
Yeah. So my passion project is the Unexpected Investor Community. So that's the website, theunexpectedinvestor.com. And if you do /community, that takes you right to the spot where you can learn about what the community is all about. And to me, this is the most exciting part of what I'm doing. It's not the adding more units. I mean, of course, I like that too, but I love talking to people and helping their eyes open up to the possibilities. So the community is all about coaching. So we're teaching concepts about how to invest, not just in real estate, but how to go from where you're at. Probably you're in your W-2, you're doing what you thought you were supposed to do, kind of rinse and repeat over and over, but you're looking for something more. You're eager for something more. And so we're teaching people how to begin to invest and demand a return on their investment, learn how to take those risks, measured risks that have been underwritten, right? Researched, and just making progress, right? Yeah. So we do monthly coaching calls. We have small accountability groups. So if you said like, okay, I'm going to open a business, or I'm going to open a brokerage account, or I'm going to buy my first rental property, and you have a small group of members of the community that are helping you through that process. We have different tools and calculators and underwriting principles that we've produced that we provide to our members. And this January, we're doing our first live workshops or conference called 2Econ 2025. So 2E is the unexpected investor.
Love it.
2Econ 2025 here in Gilbert, Arizona, where the weather is the best in the country in January.
That's so true.
And we're going to spend 3 days together going deep into setting goals for 2025, talking about different investing concepts. And my favorite part that I'm looking forward to the most is we're going to have a panel of Deca millionaires. So people who have more than $10 million of net worth, they are going to come and give us 2 hours of unfiltered access. We can ask them anything we want. They're going to mentor us for 2 hours, give us their contact information, and we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to be inspired by people who are just like us just a few years ago. Right. So that's what we're up to.
No, man, that's awesome. And you just continue to keep getting after it. And I love your journey and following along and all the things that you're building. It's not only inspiring, and I know our audience feels that as well, but it's amazing that you're providing these different types of service and platforms for people to connect. That is exactly what we're all about, is connecting people who are like-minded, who have a similar heartbeat and want the same goals. And so, not only are you living it, but you're building a community around people who can help walk that together. So we'll have the links for the website as well as what you guys have going on with the event coming up here in the show. YouTubers, Abundant Journey folks who hang out with us, thank you as always for continuing to be a part. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it. And I think it's fitting as we look into the beginning of 2025. You're talking about setting goals and talking about strategies and plans. There's no better time than to get started than today. So
that's right.
Brian, it's been great, man. It's great to catch up with you. Thanks for hanging out with us, and the wisdom as always. Audience, as always, thank you for hanging out with us. Brian, thanks for being on, man. We will continue to keep the conversation rolling, and we'll see you next time.
Love it, Nick. Thanks, man.